Again, it's really important here that if you're going to put interests, please link it back to the job you're applying for. Why would they care? In saying that, it can be a really great way for people to connect with you and feel more around who you are as a person, sharing the same values, sharing the same kind of motivations. Hey badasses, welcome back to the Badass Careers YouTube channel, which is all about helping you to craft a kind of career that has you really happy on Mondays and the other days of the week too. So this video is all about what not to put on your resume. You can leave that off. And a lot of people say to me, how could I possibly get my resume down to 1 page or 2 pages? And it's like, this is how. So just public service announcement, if you don't have it already, grab my killer resume cheat sheet. It's completely free. It gives you a sample resume and breaks down why it works and how you can make a resume that really stands out. It's in the description box down below for you to enjoy. So without further ado, let's just jump straight in and talk about these things that you can definitely just leave off your resume. So this is a huge mistake. So just generally, the first tip is like, this does not have to be every little single thing you've ever done in your career. That's a lie. That is such a big lie. So I'm a big fan of using career highlights. If you've got 20 years of experience, like I do not want to see your internships on there. Like you do not have to go all the way back to the 90s to have a compelling resume and story. So career highlights, work experience highlights, that kind of stuff is absolutely fine. Like, do you want to leave off entire jobs? Maybe not, depending. Like you don't want to just randomly leave off 5 years worth of jobs on your resume, but you don't have to go all the way back necessarily to every little part-time job or internship you ever had. And depending on the job you're going for, it might be quite strategic to leave a particular position off. It just depends. But you don't have to put everything there, for one, and then you don't have to put within the job everything you were responsible for. So I did this, I did that, I did that, I did those things, like just listing out your job description and just telling me all the things in a big long paragraph about all the things that you did in the role. Think about your audience. Think about who's reading this resume. They want to know about your skills, your career stories, your accomplishments. I don't want your resume to be a snooze fest, and I don't want you to distract them from this. So think about it for every role. What is the mark you made on the role? What is the impact you had? How did you make things better? How did you contribute? What did you achieve? And just pull out those things. You can have just 3 to 5 bullet points. That's it under each experience. Recruiters generally just skim the first few anyway. So leave out those sentences that will distract the recruiter from your accomplishments or things that you're really proud of. Leave out the fluff about how you are also responsible for admin tasks and general continuous improvement, like anything like that's gone. I want you to dramatically shorten and condense those experiences that don't have anything to do with where you want to go now, about the future. I want you to bold things that you want to make a really great first impression and you want to highlight to the recruiter, but make sure that the other stuff is more subtle in appearance. And even with certifications, guys, and education, yes, it looks cool that you've been sent on 10 different training programs, but is it relevant for this role? I had someone going for a project management role and they had done a certification in teaching English as a second language, like, you know, just out it goes. It's not everything you've ever done. I know you're amazing. I know you've done all the things, but just tailor it down to your pitch for this particular role. The second thing that you can remove is a waffle. So removing any additional language, excess language that doesn't need to be there. Your resume is a marketing pitch, and every single word on that document should add value. I want you to go through and be like, why is it here? Does it make a difference? Does it help my case? If it doesn't add value, throw it out. And in terms of using really simple language that's concise and structured and very, very easy to read, because that's key as well, this is just one example. Instead of saying responsible for managing advertising department's budget, it's just managed advertising department's budget. You know, so just try and make sure that you're speaking actively, not passively. The next thing to ditch completely is references available upon request. They know, I mean, like everyone knows you're going for a job. Of course they know that they can call your references upon request if you get to that stage of the process, right? Okay, gotcha. But there's two main options here. Firstly, like ditch it completely, take it off. I don't want to see that at all. That's option one, and that's completely fine. Option two is provide references, but give me their name and their LinkedIn already and their phone number. It can generate quite a nice positive feeling and some trust if you're comfortable doing that. In general, recruiters will not contact them before asking you anyway. But if you're concerned about that, just don't put them on. If you do want to put them in or even give them a taster, you can even provide a quote, like things my client says about me, or like my current manager said, and put some quotes and maybe their job title, something like that. You can give them a bit of a teaser. That's another kind of creative and alternative thing to do on your resume if you feel comfortable doing that as well. The next thing you can get off that resume are really generic computer skills. So if you've been working for 10 years, like we know that you know how to use Microsoft Word, like thanks. Unless the job description calls for it, then it might be a matter of the applicant tracking system looking for that. So if the job description says you need to have Microsoft Office Suite, then okay, put it on there. But like otherwise, I'm pretty sure, you know, a professional with 10 years of experience knows how to use PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and that kind of thing. Just more focus on the specific industry tools that are going to be like helpful and specific for this job. In saying that though, again, don't list all the programs you've ever used and are able to use, like the ones that are going to make the difference for this role and will be useful for this role, yes. Now the next thing that you can take off your resume are around generic interests. So when I say generic interests, I mean things like I enjoy reading, travel, running, Pilates, and yoga, you know, like things like that. So that's not going to help you to stand out, and it's kind of taking up precious space. Now, I do think that interests can play a part, especially if you're a grad, because it differentiates you from the pack. But there's a couple of things that you can do here. So firstly, what you can do is tell me why you do what you do. So rather than just calling it interest, you could say something like more about me or something like that. So you could say something like, I run marathons because I thrive on setting big goals and achieving those. You know, so give me a little bit more context and let me know what it says about you as a person. You can think about things like, I'm motivated in my professional and personal life by doing X. I'm on the board for the homeless dog shelter because, you know, what does it say about you as a person? Again, it's really important here that if you're going to put interests, please link it back to the job you're applying for. Why would they care? In saying that, it can be a really great way for people to connect with you and feel more around who you are as a person, sharing the same values, sharing the same kind of motivations. So it can be quite strategic in that way. The other option with your interests is to make them as quirky as possible if it's true. So something quirky could very well strike an emotional chord or trigger a nice icebreaker or something to discuss mid-interview. So it's a bit more of a risk. I mean, it shouldn't be a risk if you're going for companies that have a culture that fit the kind of person you are. But if you're open, like if you're willing to be really genuine and open with this, imagine an interest section that said something more like enjoys playing Settlers of Catan, loves Quentin Tarantino films, Mediterranean cooking, and Lego Star Wars collections. Do you see how that might actually strike a chord with someone and be like, oh, me too? The psychology behind this is that when we share our uncommon commonalities and someone sees that, we both stand out and have the feeling that we fit in automatically at the same time. So it can be a risk worth taking. It's a huge bonding opportunity for your resume reader, so don't waste it. So as you can see, it's either leave them off entirely, especially if you need the space to be more strategic and if you're going for a more mid-level role and you've just found other things that are really gonna shift the dial for you on your resume, leave them off, that's fine. Or if you're gonna leave them in, don't waste that space. Now, the next thing that you can leave off is personal data. And I know that this is really differs by country norms, okay? But in general, I think you can leave off things like your marital status, the level of your health, and your full address as well. I've seen that a lot of people putting their full address. Just put maybe the suburb and the city, but just put the city. Like, you do not need to put your full address on there because there's so much bias that comes into that. And maybe you're trying to get them to, you know, think good things like, I live in a nice neighborhood, so I'll put my full address and impress them. But who knows what effect it might have on the person. And likewise for like less good suburbs. So just leave it off. Anything that can elicit human bias, like if you put on there 3 lovely kids aged 12, 13, and 17, who knows what the recruiter might think? Oh gosh, that's a handful. How are we going to rely on them to pull long hours? It's lose-lose. So just leave it off. Likewise here, leave off the photo. If it's the norm in your country to not put a photo, don't put a photo. Like the reason in the States, for example, there are laws against discrimination and bias from photos. So if you put a photo on there, you might have recruiters are like, don't touch it. Don't even go near it, because they'll feel in a position where, they could be making a decision based on bias, which would make them feel uncomfortable. If the norm for your country, for your state, for your region is no photos, just follow that norm, I would say. So leave the photo off, even though a lot of the modern templates do include a photo. So the standard in New Zealand, in the UK, in Australia, US, Canada, I'm pretty sure is no photo. Now, some countries, you have to put a photo. Like if you do not put a photo in France, the recruiter will be like, what's wrong with this person? What are they trying to hide? Like, yes, it's a risk for discrimination, but hey, isn't the whole process, by the time they meet you, like your name, your suburb potentially, your photo, the previous companies you work, they're all sources of bias and discrimination, unfortunately. And at some point they're going to meet you in the interview and see what you look like anyway, and they can just find you on LinkedIn. So it's an interesting topic, and the answer to that is just, firstly, yes, we need to train more managers and recruiters on unconscious bias and not bringing that into the recruitment process first and foremost, and just follow the country norms on this one. But yeah, don't put a photo if it's not the norm. Do put a photo if there is one. There's no real other options there. Just to make sure, like what you could take off your resume are crappy photos. So we want to make sure that these photos are not necessarily professionally taken, but clear, you're smiling, you're making eye contact, you don't look like a serial killer, you don't look like you've cropped out like a Facebook photo where you've got like your friends have beers in their hands and you're at a party or a wedding. Like please don't crop out a photo when you're in a crowd, oh my gosh, anything like that. Just make sure that if you are gonna put a photo, that it is sharp and sleek, and you can actually upload your photo to a site called photofiller.com. I'll link it in the description box down below, and you can actually get people rating and ranking your photo based on various factors around perceived competence, perceived likability, these kinds of things. So if you are keen for that, you can actually upload a few photos that you're choosing between and see what the voters say, and it might help you to choose which photo you end up going with in the end. The last thing to take off your resume is every single reason you've left the job. Like I've seen resumes like that and they tell you every single reason why they left, and honestly it looks quite defensive and it just looks like you're justifying yourself. So leave that off. You can't win with this one. Like if you left a job voluntarily, that's against you. If you got laid off, it doesn't necessarily work in your favor anyway, because people are like, oh, is it a euphemism for something? If you say left to go traveling, maybe they'll be like, oh, so maybe they, want to do that again. I think in general, like you don't need to justify like why you're leaving. Now, in this particular context, post-COVID, you can provide a little disclaimer like role affected by COVID-19 pandemic or whatever that is. That's something understandable because everyone's going through that. And yeah, I mean, if you want to mention that, go for it. That's completely fine. And if you want to mention quite a big gap just with a sentence like about what you were up to, completely fine. But please don't give me a justification for every single move you've ever made throughout the course of your career. So guys, I hope that helps you when it comes to writing your next strategic resume. As I said, you can download my killer resume cheat sheet in the description box down below. And hopefully after doing all of this, your resume feels like 10 pounds lighter and is nice and short and concise and all that good stuff as well. If you're hesitating and you have any questions about, oh, shouldn't I, anything like that, please ask me down below. I do get back to my comments. I will respond back to you. And otherwise, if you want more inspiration around finding your career purpose, figuring out your next step, branding yourself, so CVs, cover letters, LinkedIn, all that good stuff, job search strategies, interview strategies, hit subscribe and join the Badass Careers fam, because you'll be getting new videos out every single week to help you with your career development. Think of me as your personal HR manager. Otherwise, guys, until the next video, stay badass and I'll see you next time. Bye.